Hey guys, it's Alex, aka the Mindful Mermaid, and today I'm going to talk to you about how I picked up and moved to Ireland and got a job. I'm also going to tell you how you can do the same with a US passport, a bit of savings, and a lot of determination. Let's do this. So, working holiday visa, what the heck is that? I actually hadn't heard of this myself, surprisingly. Basically, the working holiday visa for Ireland allows US citizens who are either college students or recent graduates to go live and work in Ireland for up to 1 year. So you either have to be currently enrolled in college, university, or some type of technical school full-time, or you have to have graduated within the last year. So basically you can apply if you are currently in college or if you graduated within the last 12 months. I basically just wrote a huge blog post, almost 3,000 words, on the whole process of applying for a visa and also what to do when you arrive in Ireland. So if you're looking for more details on what to do in terms of getting the visa and working in Ireland, I will link to that below. But I'm first going to talk about my story and my tips for anyone else that is going to Ireland. So my story basically starts as many postgraduates who don't know what they want to do after college. I was actually already in Europe. I was in Croatia and living with my Croatian boyfriend, and I was trying to apply for jobs throughout Europe and basically came to a dead end, right? The biggest issue was that most places, weren't willing to hire me if I didn't have the right to work or a visa. So once I came across the Irish working holiday visa for US citizens, that was kind of my golden ticket. So what I did is I actually booked a round-trip ticket from Dublin. So I went from Croatia to Dublin, Dublin to Chicago. My round-trip ticket was from Dublin to Chicago. I banked on the fact that, I had about 1 month, I was gonna go home, get the visa, and I would be able to take the back end of the trip back and be in Dublin. You know what, in retrospect, it was a little bit risky, but it motivated me to, get all my papers and all my stuff together to get my visa. So like I said, the process took about a month, and luckily since I went into the office and gave them everything in person, that really expedited the process. But I heard back in a month that my working holiday visa was approved and I was off to Ireland. All I had was 2 suitcases because I'm a diva, and my working holiday authorization, and 2 weeks booked in a cheap motel. So I met my partner, who is a EU citizen, so he didn't have to go through this whole process, in Dublin, and we went down to Cork to figure everything out. But like many Americans, I initially wanted to go to Dublin. I actually hadn't been to Ireland before I applied for the working holiday visa, unless you count being in Dublin Airport. But I wanted to go to Dublin because it was, the biggest city in Ireland, and I figured that was where the most opportunity was and I would meet the most people. But the more I looked into it, I just realized that this was not going to be feasible at all for us. Basically, this is because the cost of living in Dublin is so expensive. Not only is it the most expensive city in Ireland, it's one of the most expensive cities in Europe. We looked into just getting a, studio apartment, and just to rent a room was around €1,000. And since we came as a couple, we knew that we kind of wanted to have our own space and have a studio, and we could not find anything that was under even like $1,500. And those that were kind of around there were like super outside of the city, and we were like, okay, I don't know if this is gonna work. Like, I don't want to be living, like 25 minutes outside of the city, and my job's across town, and I want to actually be able to save up some money when I'm in Ireland. So that's why we decided on Cork. Cork is actually the second biggest city in Ireland, and Apple has headquarters there, Amazon, there's a bunch of tech and pharma companies there as well. There's a lot of pubs, restaurants, and there's universities, so it seems like there was enough there that we could keep busy. Like I said, we only had the first 2 weeks booked in Ireland, so we had a cheap motel, and I remember the first night we were in Ireland was extremely rough. It was actually exactly a year ago today, and it was my partner's birthday. We basically ordered pizza and we're just staying in the motel. We didn't know where to go because it was outside of the city and it was late at night. The people next to us, it was a couple, and they got into this massive fight and they were like throwing things. We heard like glass breaking. I was really concerned that someone was gonna get hurt, so we had to call the owners at like 1:30 in the morning to come down. They weren't super concerned, so then we ended up having to call the police. They were like banging on our door, and it was a mess. I remember like stacking chairs in front of the door, scared that the guy was gonna break down the door, and I'm like, Domenico, what is happening? I don't know if we can stay in Ireland, like this is just too much for me. Luckily, the luck of the Irish was on our side because we heard back from a place the next day and we're like, yep, we're gonna come in and view it. We need to get out of where we are now. And we ended up taking it. So this place was a bit expensive. I'm telling you guys, Ireland housing is a mess. It was 1,200 euros a month. So split between the two of us was 600 euros. We kind of calculated this like, okay, even if we got a job making minimum wage, which is like 10 euros, like we'll still end up having about like 1,400 a month each. So like half of our paycheck will be going to rent, and that's just how it goes. So the next step is we had to find a job. And for me, this was the hardest part. We had heard that it was going to be extremely hard to find accommodation, but for us it ended up being easier than finding a job. I think I must have applied to like, I don't know, 100 or 200 jobs, and I didn't hear back from like any. The ones I did hear back from were like, I'm sorry, but you're overqualified for this position and we don't want to consider you. So yeah, that was a bit of a struggle. I ended up taking a really random position as a digital marketer and social media manager for an alarm system company. It was in the sketchiest part of town. I didn't know this at the time. I remember the taxi driver dropped me off, and it was an industrial garage park, like, you know, where people are like loading trucks and things like that. And he was like, are you sure you've got the right address? Like, I want to wait here with you, you know, while this interview is going on. It ended up being that just this alarm system company was on a budget, and their like office of 3 people was inside, also where they were making the alarms. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do this for now. This is the only job I've heard back from. So then I signed up with a recruitment agency, and I was calling them like, seriously guys, every day. They took a really long time to get back to me, but I was persistent, and I finally got an in with them. So once I did that, they connected me with a really good job at UCC in Cork. They called me and they said, yeah, a position has opened up at the university working in the international office. You would be kind of doing admin work as an international academic advisor, and there's room to kind of move up. It's a contract basis. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yep, I'm trying to get out of this garage park, so I will take that. I was expecting an interview, but the office was like, yeah, we saw her resume and we will just take her. And I was like, great. So I have no idea where I'm working or the people I'm working with, but again, I'm just winging this whole Ireland thing, so let's do it. I lucked out a lot because the office was really cool. I worked pretty much with all women, and they were so fun. They were really inclusive of me and made me feel really at home from the start. And yeah, so I was working in undergrad admissions, basically anyone that was a non-EU citizen, so working with people from all over the world, including the US. The work was pretty admin heavy, but it was really cool because eventually I kind of moved up and was essentially appointed as the organizer for a summer school study abroad program. It was really a lot of work, but it was mainly US students. So it was interesting being on the other side, you know. So I had studied abroad twice when I was in college, and it honestly didn't really hit me like, okay, I'm not a college student anymore when it's like I'm in charge of 50 college students and, you know, people are calling me in the night because there's someone drunk and whatever. But anyway, it was a really good experience, and I ended up becoming pretty close with a lot of my coworkers, and I still keep in touch. So after all that hard work, working in a garage park and not hearing back from lots of jobs, it ended up working out. So now I guess I'll just talk a little bit in general about what Ireland is like aside from my story. So you've probably heard that Ireland is called the Emerald Isle because it's very green. The landscape is honestly out of this world, and you really need to see it in person. Pictures on Google do not even compare. You've also probably heard that it rains a lot in Ireland. I didn't think it was as bad as people made it out to be. For me, coming from the Midwest, it was nice because the winters are more mild. And the summer was actually pretty nice. Like each day is sunny for at least a part of the day. I would say the culture in Ireland is pretty much a mixture between Europe and also America. They're pretty laid back, people like to hang out, people are friendly, whatever. I'd say people have a hard work ethic, but at the same time, there's a pretty good like work-life balance. You don't see as many people that are just like, you know, living to work as opposed to Europe, which is more work to live. So I'd say that people are pretty down to earth there. It can be a bit harder sometimes to get an in with Irish people. They're very friendly, but you know, people within the country are pretty close. But I will say that, you know, once they warm up to you, they're really, you know, they want to make you feel at home, and they're really great people and really great friends to have. Okay, so now I'm just going to give you advice for what you can do if you want to live and work in Ireland. Number 1, save up if you can after graduation. You have 12 months to apply after graduating, so you might as well, you know, get a job for at least like 5 months and see if you can save up some money. Number 2, don't worry about anything other than getting the visa and booking accommodation for the first 2 to 3 weeks before you get to Ireland. Do not make the mistake of thinking that you can find a job or accommodation before you get there, because most likely you will be scammed. 3, decide where you could reasonably live within the cost of living. So I'm not saying that you just shouldn't go to Dublin, but if you're going to go to Dublin, you have to be prepared that it's going to be a lot more expensive. You're going to have to work harder to find accommodation. But on the other side, the positive of it is that Dublin does have a lot more opportunities, and it also is probably one of the better places if you're trying to stay beyond your working holiday visa. I do know people who have gotten a visa sponsorship to stay in Ireland like long term through the jobs they got in Dublin. So it really is a matter of personal preference, but you do have to be realistic. You know, you can't go to Dublin and be like, well, I only have 600 euros a month for rent. Like, you're gonna be living on the streets if you're not realistic. Number 4, worry about everything in a series of steps, right? This kind of relates back to my point about only worrying about the visa and accommodation for the first few weeks before you get to Ireland. I know it does sound overwhelming and like a lot of things to do, but I mean, you're doing this over a span of basically 2 to 3 months. It's definitely doable, and like I said in my blog post that I'm talking about, I'm basically breaking down all of the logistics for all of this. So I also have a downloadable PDF of the visa checklist and the things that you need to do once you get to Ireland. I also have a packing checklist, and I also have a spreadsheet basically of all the different Facebook groups and housing websites, jobs websites that I used and recommend. So if you're interested in getting a head start and looking at all of that, you can head to the link below. I hope my recommendations and my story have helped you in some way, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them below. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and also make sure to subscribe. All right, cheers lads.